Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Aaron Meta Show. Everyone, welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I'm Patricia, and I'm here with these two special guests. I'm here with Chrissy, aka the Diva from Musical Hell. Welcome back, Chrissy.
Thank you. Good to be back.
And I'm here with that long-haired creepy guy. So welcome back, creepy.
Yo.
All right, so today we're going to be going into the 1998 Warner Brothers animated film Quest for Camelot in honor of its 25th anniversary. So I can't believe it. We went from 10 movies looking back on Swan Princess to 3 movies looking back on Cinderella to 1 movie looking at Quest for Camelot. Pretty soon we're going to be talking about shorts. Or we could talk about the 11th Swan Princess movie that's going to be coming out in a few days, coming out on my birthday.
They still making those?
Yes, they just released the trailer of the Swan Princess 11th movie called Swan Princess. What was it called? I forget what it was called. They literally just posted it up a few days ago. Here it is. Swan Princess, A Fairy Tale is Born. And I saw the trailer, and apparently it's about that Derek and Odette are finally going to be king and queen, and Uberta is finally going to step down, and then it goes into like this huge flashback where she first becomes queen and she has to be trained by it. And also we have this other storyline involving with her and Odette's mother becoming friends, so that's a thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I know, it's weird. But yeah, they're still making more of these, and the video is in like 360p. Technology, am I right? Anyway, but we're not talking about Swan Princess. We're talking about Quest for Camelot. So, an interesting lineup of Warner Brothers failures that came out throughout the 90s and 2000s, where they were trying to ride on the coattails of Disney, and then they tried to be all experimental, and then that didn't work out, and then they had a few moments of triumph with the Lego movies until they decided, we don't need those anymore, and now Warner Brothers is it's in a bit of a dumpster fire, but I digress. Let's talk about the good old days of Warner Brothers around the, early to mid 90s, when it was doing well with stuff such as like Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. And then we saw the likes of Space Jam, and oh boy, was that a classic. But no, yeah, we know, we've talked about this with Swan Princess, that they wanted to, ride on the coattails of all the Disney movies that were coming out during the Renaissance period of the 90s. And yeah, Quest for Camelot is no exception. Based off of a book by Vera Chapman called The King's Damosel. And I was looking into like the original source material of what it's about, and it's pretty much nothing like what
it's apparently a pretty dark book.
It is.
When I did the research, I'm reviewing my script for my episode, which I did several years back. So, but there was like sexual assault and death and all sorts of stuff you're not going to get into an American Family animated feature. So
yeah,
I'm not sure who looked at this and said, yes, this is our new, proto Disney story.
Yeah,
but
so.
Then about this time, Disney was doing Hunchback of Notre Dame. So, who knows?
I guess so. I guess they were like saying, hey, looks like Princess and the Goblin, we can do that. Yeah, but no. So basically, I mean, we've had several attempts of trying to make a animated movie based off of Arthurian legend. I mean, we've already had Sword in the Stone back in the 60s. That was done by Disney. So I guess you're trying to write on the coattails. It's like, okay, we have fantasy, we have musicals, we have a tale that happened long, long ago based off of a really well-known legend in England. So I guess, yeah, we have Hunchback of Notre Dame, we have Beauty and the Beast, and various other, stories that took place like long ago, thousands of years ago in various countries. So I guess they were trying to ride on that. I'm sure that the behind the scenes story is like no stranger to a lot of animation fans, but let's just say it was a major dumpster fire. A lot of people were being fired, a lot of people quit, and there was a lot of mandate from Warner Brothers saying we want to add all these implements of the Disney formula into our movie and remove a lot of the source material that was the King's Damosel, which, I mean, I get it. It's a pretty dark story, but they could have kept some of the elements with, involving the story of Lynette and Leonie and Harris and Gareth. But I guess, let's change it up where instead of we have, two sisters, we have one that's consolidated. Instead of two brothers, we have one that's consolidated. Instead of the Red Knight, let's just have this guy who wants to take over Camelot and return it back to the Savage Ages because sure.
Because King Arthur always seems to have like this one knight who's not on with the rest of it.
Yeah, I guess
regardless of which adaptation you go with, there's always this one guy who's like not down with like the chivalry and fairness and stuff and just wants to take over everything.
Yeah, like peace and prosperity. You have this
entire panel. You have this entire panel of leftists, and then there's like the one asshole who won't shut up.
The Tucker Carlson of the group.
Oh, jeez.
Undermining family values or Christian beliefs or think of the children or something. So clearly the best way to do this is to return everything back to the age where you could just beat someone with a stick because you didn't like them.
Yeah, well, Rupert's not even that subtle about it. He just basically up and says, I want all the cool stuff and I should be in charge. I mean, this guy is not a subtle villain.
No, he's not.
No.
Yeah,
I definitely think there's probably going to be like a whole section of this episode where we discuss that and a lot of other issues. It does seem like these productions, you mentioned like how the things behind the scenes were pretty much a disaster. It does feel like that's a common theme in a lot of these films that were trying to ride the coattails of the Disney Renaissance. When they saw that Disney was doing well with these kinds of movies, they were like, well, we need to make a movie like this now,
Especially when you're talking the comic relief. I mean, Aladdin came out, it had Robin Williams, doing what Robin Williams does best. It was fantastic. It is an iconic performance. So, all of a sudden everybody was thinking, hey, you know what we need? We need like one or two comedians doing like all this anachronistic crap in the middle of the story.
Yeah, I think that what sums it up perfectly on the behind the scenes issues was, believe it or not, Laura Faust, who you may know as, a major writer and animator for things such as the Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home, the creator of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. She summed it up the best when she was actually one of the people who worked on this film back in the 90s. I'm just going to quote what she said. Warner Brothers did not know what they were doing. They didn't care about animation being as an art form as well as entertainment. They wanted profits. If they wanted a bad Disney knockoff, they should have talked to Don Bluth on their part. Yeah, I know. Lauren Faust said that. Wow. Anyway,
Camelot, it was the 90s. That was a fair cop for Don Bluth. I mean, they'd be honest.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, go listen to, Diva's discussions on all the bad Don Bluth films. I've done a podcast on all the Sullivan Bluth films, so go check that out. Anyway, let me just continue. Camelot
Diva is never going to forgive Bluth for that one scene in Troll in Central Park. And
you know what? It's kind of funny because I'm
not going to forgive Don Bluth for a lot of things, but
it's actually funny. I'm going to MomoCon as of the recording of this podcast next week. I'm actually going to post this on the day that I'm actually there. So I'm going to see Don Bluth at MomoCon. I'll just tell him, thanks for Central Park. Anyway, let me just continue on before I just go crazy. Camelot was planned as an animated feature in the veins of Ralph Bakshi's Wizards, something with a PG-13 rating. In the end, they didn't want to do it. Nearly everyone I worked on Camelot hated it and didn't even want to talk about it. Personally, it makes Don Bluth's bad movies in the 90s look good. It was rather stressful since production time was overhauled for us animators to stay at the studio longer to animate the scenes, since Warner Brothers was about to be late for a deadline on the movie. When it finished, it tanked. I myself, along with the people who I worked with, knew it was going to bomb. The heads of Warner Brothers said, "Why did this bomb?" What I said to them was, "You made it worse and turned something good into something nobody wants to look at." They even had to cancel an animated film that a guy by the name of Milton Knight pitched to them, only because they couldn't picture cartoony animation working out for animated features. Everyone I know thinks a PG-13 animated feature would have been better than a poor Disney knockoff. It still annoys me that the female character looks like Belle while the guy looks like the human version of the Beast.
Oh yeah, like you can look at both of
I think
them.
she's probably exaggerating a bit because the Pebble and the Penguin exists, and I would definitely say this is better than that, and Troll in Central Park. So, but yeah, it is. It's not very good. It's obviously, Disney Light, and if they had the courage to actually do a mature animated movie, which again, in the 90s in America, even now in America, is not something people think about. I think, it might have been, maybe not, blockbuster successful, but I think they would have had, a pretty good cult film on their hands.
Oh yeah, for sure. I guess cult films wasn't exactly something that they were thinking of, let's make a bunch of money of it. I'm sure for an independent studio, like, say, Laika, maybe would have gotten away with something like this. But a major company like Warner Brothers, yeah, cult status films, I mean, that didn't exactly, what they had in their minds. I mean, even
that wasn't what they were going for.
No,
that wasn't what they were going for. Even with, like, the Iron Giant, even though that became a cult film a few years after that premiered, that wasn't what they were looking for. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If I could say real quick, since we're more or less on the subject, you mentioned how it's come up already. I was going to save this for later, but it's come up already. The main character looks like Belle and her love interest looks like the human version of Beast.
Right.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like I can remember seeing adverts like, the trailers on TV for Quest for Camelot, and just, my initial knee-jerk reaction was cheap Disney knockoff. And, having, actually, like now, when I watch it now, it still feels like that, but it kind of goes deeper too. I'm going to credit Lindsay Ellis, formerly known as the Nostalgia Chick, said this first. I'm giving credit where credit's due, but she said once in one of the last videos she made, she described Kid Rock's All Summer Long, like you can like the song, but it's this weird mashup of Werewolves of London and Sweet Home Alabama, and while you're listening to it, it just makes you wish you were listening to either one of those songs, instead of appreciating it for what it's worth. And that has actually happened to me. I was standing in line at, I think I was at my bank. I was standing in line and waiting for my turn at the teller. And I realized that song was playing. And the more I listened to it, the more I had the compulsion to go home and listen to Werewolves of London on YouTube.
My goodness.
Is like that. Like, it fits into that same idea. It's you can like Quest for Camelot. It's not the best Disney knockoff movie out there, but if you got something out of Quest for Camelot, okay, great. But for me personally, it feels like that. It feels like this weird mashup of different Disney from different Disney movies that just, when you look at the finished product, I can't help but think that I could be watching one of the good movies that, this movie took from, instead of what I'm watching right now.
Yeah.
Right. Especially around that time, considering that this came out in 98. So, DreamWorks was already getting into the competition with Ants and A Prince of Egypt.
Right.
And then we also had Mulan coming out in 98. yeah, we had like several movies that were coming out around the same time that was showcasing that, yeah, I mean, Warner Brothers isn't exactly one that would be along with the cool kids yet.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, Disney, we're talking tail end of the Renaissance here. So this is kind of when they were getting away from, the well, for lack of a better term, the princess fairy tale formula, and they were going into, they went into Mulan and Pocahontas and Hunchback and Tarzan to varying degrees of success. So you're looking at this and it's like they're not just trying to be Disney, they were trying to be Disney from like 5 years ago.
Right. And this was also well after, like in the early 90s, like after the success of The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, when everybody realized that, oh, Disney's getting back on track. They're bringing their A game again. Like we've got to, start doing the same. We've got to try and cash in on this, and there were in the early 90s, there were a lot of movies that were trying to ride the gravy train of that. So the fact that it took them until 1998 to get on board the same train of thought just kind of makes this not only feel like a bad Disney knockoff, but a bad Disney knockoff that came too late to really matter.
Right.
Kind of impression or lasting impact, other than just the fact that its infamous reputation and the behind the scenes drama, I think, are what it's better known for now than the quality of the finished work itself.
There is also another thing that is pretty well known that many people don't even remember that it came from Quest for Camelot, but we'll get to that later. So yeah, let's get into this fantastic story, shall we? Okay, so the movie opens up with this opening orchestral scope done by Patrick Doyle, and it's basically just introducing that 10 years prior the whole world was in disarray and there was like fighting with brother, and then there was this magical sword called Excalibur that was inside of a stone and nobody can pull it off, and the only one who was destined to pull it off would rule over England and basically have Camelot on their hands. And it turned out to be a young boy named Arthur, and he was the one who became the true king. And then everything was peaceful and prosperous, and the story is told by one of his knights called Sir Lionel, and he's explaining this to his daughter Kayley. And
then Martin Luther King Jr. cured racism, and all the white and black people got along just perfectly.
It's pretty boilerplate Camelot backstory. As far as that goes. There's one odd thing. Apparently, Arthur showed Kayley was born on the day like Arthur pulled the sword out of the stone or something. So
yeah, so apparently she was destined to save Camelot from the day she was born, because that is the same day that Arthur pulled the sword out of the stone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, her dad's telling her this, and she's saying, oh, I want to go to Camelot and be a knight and, all that stuff. And he's saying, I promise I'll take you to Camelot one day. So, this guy is not going to make it past the opening credits. This guy has doomed animated parent written all over him from the moment he shows up.
Yeah, pretty much.
Talking of, Disney cliches.
Well, at least it's not the mom who dies.
Yeah,
that is true.
The mom actually plays a pretty important role in this story, which is, surprising. So
but to be fair, I mean, we've already had like other dads who did die, like Mufasa, and then later on we've had like Clayton and Frodo, if you want to call him as a father figure, even though he sucked, sure.
Yeah,
and then we also had General Shang's dad who died. So I guess this was like the time period of like the dead dads. It's like, we've already played the mom thing to death. Let's just kill the dads off.
Yeah.
You get to
and
lose
that's not even counting
parents.
The moms that didn't even show up. I mean, like, Belle and Jasmine, it's like, oh yeah, they probably just like died in childbirth or something, whatever.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Like childbirth is like the #1 killer of moms in Disney movies. I can't even buy that they had like a Joker ending where they fell off a cliff or something. I honestly do think that like bringing this child is so special that bringing her into the world just like completely trained this poor woman, and now that she's completed her task, well, it's time for me to croak. Bye, Clonk. Good luck with puberty, by the way, Clonk.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, have fun with your goofy hapless dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going into the gathering of the knights at the round table, and then we get our
Fire!
introduction.
Fire!
Goodness.
Peace, prosperity, justice, truth.
Mastodon!
Yeah, they're naming all these random virtues as they march into Camelot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I know quoting that person is like, like not kosher anymore, but I will concede that that was actually a joke that he made that like legitimately had me laughing so hard that I had to stop the video.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go into our villain, shall we? Sir Ruber. So he is as subtle as a thunderstorm.
Yeah, yet Gary Oldman is obviously, having a 5-course meal of the scenery on this one. So credit where it's
his
due.
favorite brand of sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah, now to be fair, I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to be like, oh, I'm the evil yet hammy maniacal villain. We've seen this already with like Jafar and Scar. Again, going into those kind of villains. I mean, at this point in time, they were trying to be a little bit more subtle, quote unquote, with their villains. I mean, at the time when Disney was doing it, it was like we had Shan Yu, who was like more or less kind of like really subtle with his evilness. And I guess, with Ants, we had General Mandible, which we kind of knew he was kind of like the bad guy, but he wanted to commit complete genocide over the ants and the survival of the fittest stuff, which makes sense, if you look into that perspective. And going into like a Prince of Egypt, where you have Ramesses, who's the bad guy, but his way of wanting to carry on his father's wishes makes a lot of sense if you look at it from that perspective, as well as tradition. And when you read through the Bible about how they didn't want the Hebrews basically taking over Egypt because they were being overrun. So again, when you look into that aspect, it makes a lot of sense. So again, this feels like it's a few years too late, where it's like, oh, look at me, I'm going to take over Camelot. I'm going to take it back to where it was like all violent, and we're going to go through the Savage Ages because peace and prosperity is boring.
Right. But, like even Jafar, I mean, as much as he had the whole obviously evil looming bad guy who can barely restrain, just the fact that he's plotting and scheming against the Sultan and Jasmine, like he was, I mean, like, the Sultan was like not that bright, and Jasmine, well, her words were falling on deaf ears. So, you at least had an explanation for, and that kind of stuff does happen in real life.
Yeah, same with Scar. I mean, he's, he had like the obvious evil going on, but like Simba was like, whatever the lion equivalent of 8 is. And he
basically
could, Scar could be suave when he wanted to be and charming.
He could be charming. He could, and there was also
and Ruber's not like that.
Sorry.
Ruber is, I'm evil. I'm going to, I'm going to be evil and threatening to everybody. And
it's so
I'm kind of wondering, how did this guy even get into the round table? I mean, if Arthur is half the king he is supposed to be, he should have taken one look at this guy and said, go.
Yes, thank you. No,
thank you, next.
This is like, how did you get this job? Was it so important that you have anyone sit in that one chair? You just didn't put a prop of a straw dummy.
Camelot has a staffing issue, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense where you have this guy. Yeah, I don't
They
get
had
it.
this peace and prosperity, but now the recession has hit, and now they can't find someone to sit in that one chair. So this is the guy they hired.
I really don't understand it either. I mean, considering that, everyone else is wearing blue, he's the only one who's wearing red, which I get he's supposed to be an homage to the Red Knight. But still, it's like, yeah, guy with red armor, long hair, long nails, just this conniving smile.
Twitchy eye. I mean,
this was waiting for someone to mention the eye.
Yeah, and really angular features. I mean, this is the time period when all the villains had like the cheekbones and the vaguely anti-Semitic nose, and that
if he got any more angular, he would be a Picasso painting.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, he would.
The jutting chin. It was, yeah.
A chin that could open cans.
Jay Leno is back in the corner weeping.
Yes, he's like, yeah. It's like Shrek said. Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so King Arthur is gathering all the knights on the round table, and they're going over some announcements regarding about that each of the knights are given an equal share of the land so that it can be able to help out the people. And of course, Ruber's like saying, I want all of the land and I want to be the king because I'm evil.
I should get more than, obviously I should get more than everybody else.
Yeah, clearly. Like, I mean, seriously, I mean, what have you done that you deserve more land than everybody else? Seriously. I haven't
Right.
seen anything of what you've done, but okay, sure, why not? So then Sir Lionel saying, you know, the king has decided, and I will not serve a forced king. And, you know, of course, Ruber attacks him and kills him. And then he tries to kill Arthur, but of course, Excalibur saves him. And I guess this is something that I will say in terms of like, this seems familiar. And the Swan Princess, you remember of how, you know, King William basically tells Rothbard to go away, and then we never see him again until he's ready to attack. So I guess it's kind of similar, which I guess in the, you know, Quest for Camelot's case, at least Ruber locked the door and then they couldn't escape, which makes a lot of sense. But still, it's like they couldn't have wanted posters saying, watch out for this guy, he's dangerous. No? Okay, sure. So yeah, we have another 10 years passing, and we have Kayley, who's already grown up, and she is wanting to be a knight just like her father, and she wants to be able to save Camelot when she hears the news that a griffin came by and stole Excalibur. And this is giving me Terran from Black Cauldron vibes. I want to be a hero. I don't want to be this farm boy. I want to be a great warrior. And you have no proof of this whatsoever.
Yeah, Kayley suffers from a very serious case of not like other girls syndrome. Her main, you know, which is, you know, it's okay if you have a character, you know, who is not traditionally feminine. But when you make her entire personality like, you know, I don't want to wear dresses and do embroidery. I want to wield a sword and be a hero and be a knight. And it's like, okay, yeah, but, or, you know, that, and make that her entire personality, it just, you know, falls flat.
Yeah, it really does. And you would think that, you know, throughout the course of the movie, she would get better. Like, she would be able to learn all of her mistakes and she would be able to become better. I mean, we even see, you know, throughout her montage where she's like, you know, throwing the pitchfork and aiming it just right and being able to ride around in her horse and all that kind of stuff. We think, okay, you know, she's just starting off. I mean, she's a farm girl who thinks that she can be great. I mean, she needs to be able to have that progress of learning how to become a knight and become brave. But we never really get that. And I think that's a shame, because I think that, you know, had they've, you know, executed the story a little bit better, we could have had a case where we would have seen like the, you know, the ordinary person become a hero. I mean, everybody loves a good underdog story.
Yeah, I mean, we keep bringing up Mulan because it was the same year. And I think, you know, that's a very good way of developing a heroine who is not traditionally feminine. She starts out in this role that she tries to fit into because, you know, she wants to do it for her family, and it's because her culture tells her this is what she has to be, and it's not suitable for her. So she's, you know, confused and upset and disheartened. And then circumstances intervene where she has to, you know, disguise herself as a man and become a soldier. And it's not easy for her, but she's able to develop her truth strengths, which are, you know, resourcefulness, you know, quick thinking. She's very innovative, and that's where you really see who she is as a person, and it's just fantastic to watch.
Absolutely. In fact, I would even say that if you want to see Quest for Camelot done right, watch Mulan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that it's a great example, because when you know about the legend of Mulan, she was able to do such a great job of fooling the soldiers. She became one for 12 years. And it wasn't until months after she retired that they were like, wait, you were a woman this whole time?
Yeah.
So yeah, Mulan did a fantastic job of implementing the same things Kayley is trying to do, where, you know, she started off as nothing. She was just this lowly girl who noticed that her father was dying. Her little brother was too young to go into the war. And so she had to be able to, sign up and disguise yourself as a man and fight off against, well, I mean, I guess it depends on the legend. Some say Mongolian, some say Huns. It depends.
Yeah.
But more or less, it's the same premise in which, like, her family is in crisis. There's this huge threat that's happening into their country. She has to go out there and she needs to be able to save the day. So yeah, pretty much the same premise, except executed way better. So yeah, if anything, I thought that maybe Garrett should have been the main protagonist in this, because he's the one who has a backstory. He's the one who has a bit of a tragedy that happens to him throughout the movie. He's the one who actually becomes better. Like, he wanted to be like just this hermit who lived in this forbidden forest all by himself, but he actually grows and progresses as a character who, starts interacting with more people and more creatures, and then eventually he starts, overcoming his obstacles, both inner and outer, and then he basically becomes the hero in the end. If anything, he should have been the main character.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have
also you didn't have a whole lot of disabled main characters in animated movies in the 90s, so
that's true. You're right.
That is like a small thing. If you can give like something to this movie, you can say that.
Yeah, I mean, the closest equivalent that we had was Extreme Ghostbusters, if you remember that there was a character who was in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I mean, in the there was always this kind of, you had the group in the series, in a cartoon series, and you had the group, and they had like, you had like the white boy who was usually the leader, you had a girl, you had, probably a black kid and an Asian kid, you might have like a disabled kid, and it was just kind of like kind of the diversity band, basically.
You know what? I just thought of this. You know what the kid's name of Extreme Ghostbusters is, who's in the wheelchair?
What?
Garrett.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, wow. What a coincidence. Anyway, so yeah, I think that, we would get a little bit more diversity with other characters later on. I mean, Toph from Avatar The Last Airbender is a fantastic example of using her blindness so that she can be able to fight off against anything. So again, it's basically examples of things that we would see better on much later on. So I guess, maybe Quest for Camelot walks so other things could run on. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give it this credit. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, we have, of course, Kayley saying, I want to be a knight and I want to be able to save Camelot. And of course, then we have Ruber coming in and kidnapping Juliana because he wants to use her so that they can be able to get in. And you have this really awkward song in the mix, which is supposed to be the villain song, which, for a lot of people, they say that the villain song is like one of the best, if not the best songs in the entire movie. And this is one of the worst that I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
It's not very good. I mean, he more talks than he sings, and then he just basically has this huge montage of turning all of his henchmen into like these like really weird metal creatures with weapons or something like that
basically he's got like this potion, which there's like a throwaway line that he says he got it from witches, and that's about it. We don't know, he just happens to have this potion from somewhere, and basically what it does is it fuses organic beings with like weapons and stuff. So like he throws like a rooster and an axe together, and you get like this goofy, rooster with an axe beak on it, and that's like one of the comic relief characters. And then he throws his goons in, and then they have like maces for hands. And his the ultimate thing is that he wants to bond with Excalibur, basically.
Yeah, and funny thing that you mentioned about that chicken mixed with the axe, he's played by Jaleel White.
Oh, yes, he is. I forgot about that.
Like, that is you go from Steve Urkel to Sonic the Hedgehog to Bladebeak. Like, wow.
What the hell?
What happened?
I know, what happened? Yeah, I'm just like baffled as to like what I was seeing when I first heard that. And I just saw Jaleel White recently in a movie that he was with Adam Sandler, and I think it was what was it called? Hustle. That's what it was called. It was Hustle. And, he doesn't have like a major role in that movie, but it's a really great movie if you ever seen it. It's based off of a story involving with like Adam Sandler playing as this NBA scout who goes over to Spain to try to see if he can sign up this kid who goes over to play basketball in the streets and, signs him up over to the Philadelphia 76ers. So yeah, watch the movie. It's on Netflix. Really great. Check it out. Anyway, so you have finally Kayley, who gets free because it's the other henchman's turn to be turned into a whatever that thing is. And then
it's pretty stupid how she gets out.
Exactly. It's like, it's my turn. Okay, well, let me go then. And then you have this scene in which when, Juliana tells Kayley, go find Arthur, and it's your, you have to do it. It's, you're the only hope that we have. And then she sings what's probably, like I said earlier, that it's probably one of the other things that a lot of people took away from this movie that has become so infamous that nobody even remembers that it came from this in the first place. The prayer song.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I have heard this song so many times because when I'm at church, I hear people sing it all the time. I'm not even joking. I
believe you. This is exactly the sort of song that evangelicals will appropriate and do praise band with. So
yeah, I was filming an Easter special for ABC, and I saw Yolanda Adams and Donnie McClurkin singing this song as a duet, and it was amazing. Just seeing everybody starting to tear up and everybody just starting to raise their hands up and just like being in awe with this. It was quite an experience, I gotta tell you. But
it's honestly, I think it is honestly the best song in the score. And of course it's done by Celine Dion, who was of course like the 90s queen of awards bait pop ballads at the time.
Yeah.
So
especially like the really, like the big, not just pop ballads, but like the really big orchestral grandiose pop ballads, the kind that are like literally going to make you feel like you are being blown out of your seat as soon as the credits roll.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, unless we say more, My Heart Will Go On.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's not like even, that didn't even really go away. To like listen to Ashes, which was used for Deadpool 2 of all things, which sounds like
and I mean, credit where it's due. I mean, she's pretty good at it. I mean, I think I think the end credits Beauty and the Beast. I mean, I still get chills every time I listen to that. So
absolutely, and that was like her first song that she ever performed. Like
it was like her first. I think it was like the first one that got her noticed.
Yeah, she was just. I think she was just starting to break into top superstar status at that point.
Yeah, because she was mostly known in Canada.
Right.
Yeah. She did have a following in Canada. I think the Beauty and the Beast was the one that got her noticed outside of Canada.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, and that song won a Golden Globe. It was nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song, but then it lost to When You Believe with Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey from Prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
which should have earned it, but I don't know. It's just When You Believe.
Speaking of quasi-religious pop songs.
Yeah, that's another song that I hear pretty much all the time when I'm at church.
Yeah, it sounds like their voices aren't meshing well. There's no harmony there. Their voices are too busy competing to each other. So it's less a beautiful ballad and more like the dueling divas Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
pretty much. But I think that we have that song playing while Kayley's trying to run off, and she goes into the Forbidden Forest, and then she meets up with Garrett, and then she starts learning that he's blind and he wants to be away from her because he's a hermit and he's all alone, and he thinks that nobody else will understand him. So he plays into that trump card. And then, of course, you have Ruber, who learns from his griffin that Excalibur is lost in the forest, and so he has to go after it. And then we have, a whole bunch of like crazy mischief involving with this forbidden forest, which you would think that this enchanted forest would be like really, interesting, because we spend a good majority of the time in the forest. There
are some ideas in this that I think, probably because there was such a toxic work environment that they aren't properly capitalized on. But this forest, basically, everything is, alive. Well, sentient, basically, almost.
Yes.
Like the plants are reaching out for them, and there's like all these, weird vines, and there's some really interesting stuff going on, and it's kind of fun to see Garrett navigate it, without his sight, even while Kayley's trying to fumbling along behind him. But again, it's like, okay, this is fun, but it doesn't have much purpose, and we really need to explore it more to capitalize on it.
Yeah, pretty
Right.
much. Like I would understand that they were trying to like do some really interesting things with this forest. Like, wow, everything is coming to life. It's kind of like, going into Beauty and the Beast again. It's like, wow, we have this enchanted castle, and we have all of these creatures, and we have all of these
Yeah.
furnitures, and we have all of these like, sentient beings that are coming to life.
It's almost a bit like Avatar in that it's this almost alien landscape where everything is foreign and strange and beautiful and also out to get you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that what made Avatar work is that there was Awa, there was a deity that actually had everything connected. It was basically trying to be like a social commentary on the environment and about
Yeah.
nature, and that made sense on why it was important to protect and why that humans were trying to go after it with unobtainium, and it's like, oh, we have to protect what we have because this is our home. That made a lot of sense on why Pandora was this important place that
Yeah,
needed to
and
be
you can tell
protected.
there's like a lot of, world building stuff that they didn't put in the movie but they knew was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really another problem with the movie as a whole, is that there are good ideas in this movie. It's not a situation where just everything about the movie is bad. There's some good ideas in this movie. We mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, it's one of the few animated films where we can, point to and say that there was an actual disabled person. Yeah, sorry,
Mhm.
a differently abled person in the film, and there are a lot of good ideas here. They just aren't really capitalized
And
on.
there's actually a pretty good voice cast. I mean, we've got obviously Gary Oldman's having the time of his life.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But also we've got Carrie Elways as Garrett. Pierce Brosnan, I think, is like King Arthur.
Yeah, he is.
And he's not singing.
Yeah, he's got a voice double, so that's good. They got Bryan Adams as Carrie Elways' voice double, though, and that doesn't quite work. But...
Yeah, that sounded really weird. It's like, where did his accent go?
Yeah, I mean, he's talking like he's talking like Wesley, with that nice little British accent, and then all of a sudden he's got this Rocky Bryan Adams voice. What the hell?
Yeah, what the hell? I mean, I understand that, we need to have the voice doubles to, have, the actors
and that was
like, take a break.
that was pretty common, but I mean, very often it was Broadway actors. Lea Salonga was, I think, Jasmine's
and
in Aladdin.
and Mulan.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
Mulan. Yeah. And you had other people doing that as well. So
Yeah, pretty much. That made sense. Like, it was
Mhm.
able to kind of like match with what the voice
I
actors
think
were doing.
Hugh Panaro, I think, did some voice doubling for Swan Princess, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Right.
Which again makes a lot of sense because they got Broadway actors, but
Mhm.
not like well-known musicians and pop singers.
and they kind of it sounded more or less the way the character sounded when they spoke.
Yeah. Which when you hear Kayley and Garrett sing, it does not sound like the same actor. It clearly shows. It's pretty distracting. And you would think that, okay, they're trying to like sing about what they're going through. They're trying to sing about how they're feeling. But then you're like, wow, where did his accent go? Why is she so high pitched and all that stuff? You're not supposed to be thinking about that when you're trying to listen to the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's apparent when, Garrett sings his ballad, and it's like, you have all these cool things that are happening in the background with the forest and everything coming to life and the rocks coming up and the plant is rope, going off like a helicopter propeller. But then you're like, okay, but the singing doesn't match.
Yeah. It's one of those things I encounter a lot when I'm reviewing a movie and I'm looking at something. It's like, if this were a better movie, I would not be thinking about this.
Right.
Because, either the story is boring or something's going on or I'm not engaged and it's like, I can't ignore what's going on.
Right.
I mean, that's I think where I think the nitpicking comes in, not because, if it's just, not because, the storytelling needs to be consistent. It's if the storytelling is good enough, you're not going to care about that.
Right. But if the storytelling isn't doing its job, well, then the elephant is right there. And
you're just going to keep looking at it because there's nothing else to pay attention to.
Pretty
exactly.
much.
The illusion is ruined when you can see the elephants being ushered off stage.
Yes. Yeah, so we go over to Dragon Country, which...
Oh, jeez.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. So we have the comic relief. We have Devon and Cornwall, played by Eric Idle and Don Rickles. Where do we begin?
Oh!
Okay, I'll tell you, they're the worst part of the movie.
They are the worst part of the movie. Their song is terrible.
It's awful.
I mean, yeah, they're introduced with this they're introduced like they say, we're what happens when cousins marry, and it's like, okay.
Incest joke.
Incest jokes in our kids movie. Nice.
Yeah, so
they have a stupid song that has a bunch of, anachronistic pop culture references, and most of them are like,
Aladdin did it.
Yeah, well, yes, but again, it was like Robin Williams, and so he made it work. And also Robin Williams obviously was just, riffing on stuff, and they picked the best of the best and animated it.
Yeah, pretty much.
This, they just have a song, and it's like, okay, so who are some famous couples that we could have? Sonny and Cher, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, we have Elvis.
Elvis. Yeah, I think there's like a Phantom of the Opera reference.
There was a Phantom of the Opera reference. There's a Jason Voorhees reference. Yeah, there's
yeah. So it's just like all this, and it's just like all this anachronistic pop culture stuff that has nothing to do with anything. I mean, Robin Williams was doing the voices, which is why they had him. The genie transforming into Arnold Schwarzenegger and John Wayne and everybody else. But it's just like they're just dressing up the characters in funny costumes while they sing, basically.
Yeah, that's like literally the only references that they've done. It's not like they make pop culture jokes on the fly.
Right.
They just do it when they have that one song, and it's just like, oh, look at this. Here's this funny reference while we're singing about, I would be better off without you. So, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they have to stick around with the movie because they helped Kayley and Garrett escape from Dragon Country, and now they're banished because they helped out a human. And I'm like, great. We get to hang out. Well,
it's also implied they're kind of the runts of the dragon litter, and nobody really likes them anyway.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Which, I can't blame them. And also they've kind of got this semi-arc where they're unable to fly because they're disagreeing all the time, and at the end they're only able to do it when they agree with each other. So
yeah, teamwork.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work and whatever, and it's it's dumb.
It is pretty dumb, yeah. Again, taking the comic relief that we've seen with various characters in the Disney movies in the 90s. I mean, we've had, again, going into, Robin Williams as the genie, and then they tried to do this again with all of the other characters. They tried to, do this again with Phil from Hercules, and Mushu from Mulan, and Turk from Tarzan. And again, I can see what they were trying to do, but yeah, just because you have, Don Rickles and Eric Idle together does not make it immediately funny. It's like,
right.
Okay, we're going to have this well-known comedian, and we're going to have, one of the members of Monty Python coming together. you can't turn that into gold. You actually
Yeah,
have to like,
they're
work
trying to do like a kind of odd couple thing where you have, the kind of the prissy English one and, the kind of more rough around the edges American one. But again, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that just makes you question about like, okay, one is British and the other one is American and they're brothers. How does this work? Okay, whatever. Yeah, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it just makes it sound pretty pretentious when you think about it. And they're even both named after like locations in England, Devon and Cornwall. So
Right.
sure. Anyway, but yeah, we have trying to like give some drama into this where we get to know about Garrett's backstory about how he became blind and how nobody believed in him except for Sir Lionel, who taught him about that the knight's strength comes from his heart and stuff like that, and how he was able to learn the important lessons of being in the forest. So they're trying to bring some development between the characters, but it's very brief and you're trying to like justify them being as a couple. I mean, at least with, again, going into Beauty and the Beast again, I'm sorry, people. At least they took the time to show off that, yes, Belle and the Beast started off pretty rough, but over time, they actually fell in
considering
love.
that the movie is 90 minutes, I think they developed that reasonably well.
Right.
Very good.
Absolutely.
It's like one of the, I would honestly call it one of the best developed relationships in a film period that I can name off the top of my head, just because it is handled as well as it is.
Absolutely. And considering that, they didn't just fall in love in like literally like a day or two, it took like weeks, maybe even months for that to happen.
It did give the impression as that, yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, here's another thing. I guess I completely forgot about this mentioning in the early part of the movie. So, according to what Juliana said, it took about 3 days for them to go over from their house all the way to Camelot. So, throughout the beginning of the movie, we have Sir Lionel who goes, to Camelot, and it's like spring. I think it's summer. I don't know. But then when they finally return after he's dead, it's wintertime. How long did it take for them to go all that way? Anyway, that's just a nitpick I just thought of, but I digress. Anyway, so yeah, 3 days. I know this like the Little Mermaid, mentality about like, oh, in 3 days we'll fall in love. But yeah, but even that, it makes a lot of sense why they fell in love with each other because, she Ariel saw Prince Eric while he was performing at his birthday party. Prince Eric fell in love with her voice, and then eventually he had to fall in love with her as a person,
right?
So again, that makes sense. So you have 3 days of them like wandering around in this forest and trying to find Excalibur. They have a goal in mind, but then let's throw love in there. I mean, at this point in time, I'm thinking that platonic relationships are a thing,
Yeah.
But no, I guess not. I mean, I guess they were trying to keep into the original story with the sisters falling in love with the brothers, and one of them was named Garrett. So I guess they're trying, that's like the closest thing to kind of like tie this into the King's Damosel. But yeah, but other than that, it's I'm just not falling for it, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Can't say I blame you.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have to go into another love song, See Through Your Eyes, where they're like, oh, yes, we're totally in love.
Yeah.
Which, again, I can kind of see what they were trying to do, but again, chemistry.
This is, the characters who start out antagonistic to each other and then kind of end up falling in love. I mean, we see that in Beauty and the Beast. You see it. It's a very old trope. I mean, it's like Much Ado About Nothing, Pride and Prejudice. There's a lot of places you can point to where this is done very well. This is not done well at all.
No, it's not.
Right.
Because they start off, kind of, snippy and antagonistic towards each other. And then they have like maybe one scene where they have like a conversation, and then there's a love song, and then we're in love.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, so we go over to the scene where they finally found where Excalibur is, and it turns out that an ogre has it. A
very terrible CGI ogre.
I was about to literally say the same thing. A terrible CGI rock ogre.
Even by the standards of late 90s, this was, it's like, you have you know how, in the old animated movies, you'd have like animated shorts, you'd have like Tom the cat passing by a row of cupboards, and one cupboard would be a little differently colored than the rest. And you knew that was the one that Jerry was going to open and whack him with the frying pan. That's what this looks like. This is like something that's, just obviously pasted on top of, the rest of the animation.
Yeah, and then it's like when you make the Megazord from the first Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie look like a work of cinematic art, you've definitely taken a wrong turn.
Yeah,
You've taken several wrong turns. Your navigation app on your phone has seriously malfunctioned and is just saying turn left over and over again.
Your destination is 3,000 miles away.
I actually had something like that happen to me not too long ago.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, it's funny now.
Yeah, I'm sure it is now. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we have to go after this ogre because he's using Excalibur as a toothpick, and then of course we have Ruber in the limelight, who's trying to go after the Excalibur, and then of course we have the freaking ogre's butt scene where he gets sat on, he gets farted
and the
at.
ogre farts on him.
Exactly.
Because again, this was what we thought was going to be a hit animated movie in the 90s. We needed a fart joke.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's throw that in there, sure. And then of course we finally get into Camelot, and then Garrett says, "Oh no, you go ahead. I don't belong in that world. I'm gonna stay in the forest because that's where I belong." It's like, okay, after everything that you've gone through, you're still thinking that. And again, this is where, like I said, that this, I believe that this kind of like gives me the idea that maybe if he would have been the main character, that they probably would have gone into a scene where they would have had that, but going into more depths on why he was feeling that way, other than just, oh, he was blind and nobody believed in him and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I wish that there was more development of that, but no, we have Kayley. She gets captured immediately after she separates from Garrett, proving that she's a terrible protagonist.
Yeah, it takes her like 2 minutes to get captured.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Ruber gets his potion, fuses himself with Excalibur because, he doesn't want Excalibur to escape, and this is clearly going to go perfectly well. And then finally they get into Camelot, going, into the mentalities of, oh, we're going to copy off the Trojan horse, where it's like, okay, we're going to pretend that Juliana's going to be the one to be inside just visiting Camelot for the first time in over 10 years since her husband died. Yeah, sure, let's let her inside. And then of course there's this huge attack, the knights are overwhelmed, and of course it's up to Kayley and Garrett, and finally Devon and Cornwall are able to agree with things so that they can be able to fly and throw fire. And then they were able to fight off against Ruber. They tricked Ruber into putting the sword in the stone, and then happy endings for all, where Garrett and Kayley are knighted and they get married and they ride off literally into the sun. No, they don't ride
on the same horse.
They ride on a horse that says we've been knighted. That's literally how the movie ends. So yeah. Now here's the thing, like, I think that, like we said earlier in the podcast, I think there's some good ideas here, but you can definitely tell that the mandates behind Warner Brothers were like saying, let's add this and this and this into the movie because we think that, because the Disney formula made people really like it, we think that, they'll definitely go see it. And again, if they would have gone into the direction that, they wanted to in the first place, I don't know if it would have made like a lot of money, but at least, it will get people talking about like, wow, this was completely different than it was back then. I mean, it's kind of funny because I recently saw the trailer. I don't know if you guys seen it. Have you seen the trailer to Nimona?
I just saw it recently. Yeah.
I have not yet.
Yeah, so Nimona is based off of N.D. Stevenson's comic graphic novel series, where it's basically like, trying to like be a different take on like this, crazy rambunctious heroine, and it's trying to like break off what you would expect from like a fantasy tale with princesses and castles and all that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff.
Right.
It looks great, by the way. I think that trying to break away from like the formula that we've been accustomed to with a lot of a lot of animated stuff that's been
Mm-hmm.
coming out recently. I mean, that's what makes it really
Yeah, it
unique, is that
definitely had an Into the Spider-Verse kind of quality to the animation that I thought looked really good.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think that I mean Nimona as a character I can root for. It's like, oh, we have this really pretty story about like princesses and living happily ever after. Well, not on my watch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna like, turn into a dragon and blow fire and wreck everything. It's like, more please. I mean, I like it when things are shaken up a little bit and we get to
Mm-hmm.
break away from conventions. I just wish that Warner Brothers would see that people actually like it when things are different as opposed to things being kind of samey.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, unfortunately, the movie was a flop when it came out, as we mentioned earlier with Lauren Faust's discussion.
Very
And
big flop.
yeah, major. I mean, well, I wouldn't say it's like I mean, compared to like Iron Giant and Osmosis Jones and Looney Tunes Back in Action, I mean, it was like one of the lesser flops. But yeah, I mean, it was not a good time period for Warner Brothers animation. I mean, even with like great films like Batman Mask of the Phantasm underperformed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Mhm. But I would argue that those movies, while they underperformed at the box office, those are actually good movies that, have a lot of merit and definitely rewatch value. Whereas Quest for
Mm-hmm.
Camelot is more of a one and done, if that.
Yeah, and you can kind of see why that, um why they are kind of hesitant to do stuff that it's a little different when you have movies like Iron Giant that kind of fail at the box office. But I mean, people eventually came around to it. I mean, most of those movies that we think of as from my generation in the 80s and 90s, those icons like The Princess Brides, Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, they didn't do well at the box office at all. It took
No,
that
they
home
didn't.
video market for people to actually get on board and say, hey, this is pretty cool. And unfortunately, I think that's something we're really losing with the streaming model today, is that it's a lot harder for those smaller niche movies to build their audience and really find their place in the canon.
Yeah,
Mhm.
especially with a lot of exclusivity with streaming, that
Mm-hmm.
you don't know exactly what's going to be coming out unless, of course, if you have that prescription. And not to mention that, we've been seeing this in recent years, that you can't take, oh, it's exclusive to this streaming service for granted, because a lot of this stuff can be removed.
Yes, they
Exactly. I
can.
mean, when we just as we're filming this, I mean, there's been a big dust up because Disney Plus is removing the Willow series. They were going to
Right.
remove the Howard Ashman documentary, but I think they walked that back because everybody's like, do you really want to be, removing this story about, one of your greatest lyricists who died from AIDS, like a week before Pride Month, and while you're in this big fight with the state of Florida over defending gay rights? But yeah, a lot of that stuff, they just drop and you can't find it unless you pirate it. And I think because they don't want to pay their writers residuals, and that's why they're on strike now. So it's a really bad model, and I think they're exploiting it. And I don't think it's sustainable, especially now that the labor is saying, we can't do this.
Yeah, pretty much. And so, sure, we have our fair share of niche films. I mean, they are out
Mhm.
there. You just have
Yes.
to go search for it. And even with like foreign films, again, unless of course they have like a wide distribution, like with G Kids or even with Cartoon Saloon, again, unless you find those things, they are pretty niche. But again, you have to go out and find them. But it's
Yeah.
becoming
Yeah.
less and
Mhm.
less
Fathom
like,
Events has been doing some good stuff with like some anime and older classic movies that they're doing live shows with. A couple weeks ago, my husband and I saw the live stage version of Spirited Away that they did in Japan.
Oh my gosh, I've been wanting to see that.
It is extraordinary. I hope to God that they get this like on some kind of download or DVD, because honestly,
Definitely.
it is like a masterclass in how stagecraft, and just simple puppetry and image, sets and costumes create something extraordinarily magical. I mean, I was crying at the end. It's beautiful. There's no other word for it.
I really want to
see this so bad.
Me too. Yeah, I'm hoping that it does come out, because if it does, I will see it immediately, because I've been hearing some great things on it. So yeah. Anyway, so bottom line, Quest for Camelot does have some really good ideas. There are some things that, again, could have been executed had they decided to not be mandated by the major executives at Warner Brothers. But yeah, I mean, this is clearly like, oh, we're trying to cash in on the 90s Disney formula all over. And unfortunately, it's not going to become like one of the cult hits from the 90s, like Cats Don't Dance or Iron Giant or any of those other movies. So yeah, again, if you want to see a movie that came out around the same time that did a formula like this, again, go watch Mulan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, if you are curious of watching it, as of the making of this podcast, it is for free on YouTube, so you can go check it out. Maybe you were one of those people who did like it, or maybe you were those people who didn't like it, or maybe you've never seen it before, but try to see if, maybe our thoughts of it would, maybe get you curious into tuning in, and maybe you come up with your own conclusion. I'm actually really curious.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that should be it for our discussion of Quest for Camelot. So Diva, Creepy, thank you so much for coming on by.
Thank you for having me.
Agreed. Thank you.
All right, so as usual, guys, plug and promote your stuff.
All right, I'm at Musical Hell on YouTube, Twitter, still for the time being, kind of unspoutable, Tumblr, Facebook. So yeah, come find me, come watch my stuff. I reviewed Quest for Camelot, a lot of those Don Bluth movies we talked about, and a lot of, the really bad Disney knockoff stuff. So,
all right.
I am on Vimeo nowadays and OnlyFans. That's become something of a low-key joke. It was like one of the few places I could find that I could post my stuff that they wouldn't give me crap about. I have one book that came out last year. I have finished the second one in the series, and I am working on the third one now. I'm also working on a young adult supernatural mystery series at the moment that is not going to be the standard fare that everyone has both lauded and criticized me, the few people who know about what I write. Yeah, it's going to involve teenagers, and they're not going to be ironically, it's going to involve teenagers, and they're going to be avoiding doing the one thing that teenagers are most famous for doing.
Sneaking out at night. All right. So yeah, and as for me, you can check out my work. You can check out my blog, which is at oldschoollane.net. There's YouTube. There's youtube.com/oldschoollane, facebook.com/oldschoollane. I'm on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. You can check out my podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, many places. New episodes of the podcast will go there first, and then they'll go up in a few days on YouTube. Like I said, as of the making of this, I'll probably be gone at MomoCon. So you guys who are there, I'm hoping to see you at my panel, which is going to be at room 404, and it'll be discussing about how I analyze media, and how I am able to write down and do my research for the videos that I do, and how I conduct my interviews so I can be able to get information that is pretty much unknown across the internet. So if you want to know about how I do my work, then please show up on my panel. It's going to be at Sunday, May 28th at 8:30 a.m. and it's at room 404 over at the Georgia Convention Center in Atlanta, Georgia for MomoCon. So I'm hoping to see you guys there. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us talking about Quest for Camelot. Let us know in the comments below about what your thoughts are this movie. So, did you like it? Did you not like it? Have you never seen it and you're curious into watching it? And let us know about some of the ideas that you think could have been made into a much better product, or maybe this was like doomed from the start. So that's it. Hope to see you around soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.